There is a city in America where you can walk down the street with a cocktail in your hand and nobody will stop you. Not because nobody cares. Because the city decided, collectively, that this is the correct way to exist. Savannah, Georgia. The hostess city of the South. Founded in 1733, the last of the original 13 colonies, the first planned city in America, 22 squares of live oak and Spanish moss, and antebellum architecture that has survived every war, every fire, every hurricane, and the arrival of John Barrent with a notebook. This is a city that has been entertaining people for 290 years. It has the food to match. In 1919, three brothers from Greece arrived in Savannah and opened an ice cream parlor at the corner of Gwinnett and Habersham Streets. Their names were George, Peter, and Basil Leopold. They had learned the art of candy and dessert making from an uncle who had already settled in America. They opened at the intersection of two streetcar lines, which was either a brilliant business decision or a lucky one. Probably both. The original location was a former fruit stand. The brothers converted it into what became, over the next 50 years, the most beloved ice cream parlor in the history of Savannah. Their soda fountain was legendary. Locals still talk about the malts, the milkshakes, the black and white sodas, the banana splits served by the soda jerks who worked the counter. The ice cream molds, shaped into elaborate holiday forms, were a fixture at every fine club in the city. A boy named Johnny Mercer grew up 1 block away from Leopold's. He swept floors there as a 10-year-old. He grew up and became one of the most celebrated lyricists in American history. Moon River, Days of Wine and Roses, Skylark. He came back to Leopold's every time he was home from Hollywood. He told Peter Leopold that he was going to write a song about the store's signature flavor, Tutti Frutti, a lightly pink strawberry ice cream with candied fruits, nuts, and rum. He never did. The flavor remained anyway, unchanged, the flavor of Savannah summers. In 1969, Stratton Leopold, Peter's youngest son, closed the original location and left Savannah to pursue a career in Hollywood. He became a film producer. Mission Impossible 3. The Sum of All Fears. Paycheck. He stored the original fixtures from his father's store. The black marble soda fountain, the wooden back bar, the interior telephone booth, in a storage facility for 35 years. In 2004, he and his wife Mary reopened Leopold's at 212 East Broughton Street in downtown Savannah, using the original fixtures, the original recipes, the original techniques. Same ice cream. Different building. The business was closed by current co-owner Stratton Leopold in 1969, but when it reopened, it came back exactly as it was. The line now stretches out the door and down Broughton Street on warm evenings. The Tutti Frutti is still there. So is the butter pecan, the flavor that Jimmy Carter always ordered. Walk down River Street in Savannah on any afternoon. About halfway down, you will smell something. Something sweet and buttery and warm. You will follow the smell to the River Street Sweets storefront, where you can watch pralines being made on copper kettles through the window. A Savannah praline is not the same as a New Orleans praline. Both are made with Georgia pecans, sugar, cream, and butter. But the Savannah version cooks slightly differently. The sugar crystallizes in a way that makes the candy slightly more crumbly at the edge, slightly more yielding at the center. The texture is specific. People who have eaten pralines in both cities argue about this. Nobody agrees. Both cities keep making their version. The praline tradition in Savannah comes from the French colonial influence that shaped the city's architecture and its cuisine. French settlers brought the concept of praline, originally a French confection of caramelized almonds, to the American South, where almonds gave way to the native pecan and cream replaced dry caramel. The result was a candy uniquely Southern. River Street Sweets has been making Savannah pralines on River Street since 1973. They give samples. The samples close the sale. This has worked every day for 50 years. Georgia produces more pecans than any other state. The Savannah praline is the candy that makes the most of that fact. Savannah's red rice is not the same as Charleston's red rice, and if you say so in either city, you will start an argument. Both are tomato rice dishes. Both trace their lineage to the West African jollof rice tradition brought to the American South by enslaved people. Both use long-grain rice, tomato, onion, and smoked pork. But Savannah's version has its own character. Drier than Charleston's, cooked in a cast-iron pot, the bottom developing a slight crust that comes away from the iron when you serve it. The Savannah version is more likely to include smoked sausage, andouille, or kielbasa, and more likely to be served as a standalone dish rather than a side. The Gullah Geechee people, the descendants of enslaved West Africans who maintained their cultural traditions on the Sea Islands and coastal Lowcountry of Georgia and South Carolina, are the source of both the Savannah and Charleston red rice traditions. The rice itself, Carolina Gold, was a West African variety brought to the Lowcountry by enslaved people who possessed the agricultural knowledge to grow it in tidal wetlands. The planters owned the land. The Gullah Geechee owned the knowledge. The red rice that resulted belongs to their tradition. In Savannah, red rice appears at every church supper, every family reunion, every Gullah Geechee cultural event. Mrs. Wilkes' dining room on Jones Street has served red rice as part of its family-style lunch since the restaurant opened in 1943. There is a cocktail in Savannah that has been called the strongest drink in America, the vanquisher of men, the mortal enemy of despair, the drink that may have saved the city from being burned down. The Chatham Artillery is a military unit founded in 1751, making it older than the United States. In the 1850s, the most commonly accepted origin story, a sergeant named A.H. Luce mixed up a punch in a horse bucket to welcome home a visiting militia regiment called the Republican Blues. The ingredients: rum, brandy, bourbon, lemon juice, sugar, and champagne. No specific quantities. Whatever was available. Enough to fill a horse bucket. The men of the Republican Blues were laid out before the evening was over. The punch's national fame came in 1870 when a convention of Southern journalists visited Savannah and were taken on a riverboat cruise. Many punch recipes call for Santa Cruz rum, which became more popular after Prohibition. The journalists, unfamiliar with the punch's potency, made bets about its ingredients. The bets led to more drinking. None of them could report on what they had originally come to write about. They all wrote about the punch instead. The story spread across the country. Savannah was suddenly famous for the most dangerous cocktail in America. The legends accumulated. George Washington was said to have sampled it during his 1791 visit to Savannah and gifted the artillery 2 cannons from the Battle of Yorktown, though historians debate whether Washington's generosity was inspired by the punch or by genuine military respect. Admiral George Dewey, hero of the Battle of Manila Bay, was reportedly felled by the punch at a parade in his honor in 1900. Some Savannahians claim that General Sherman spared the city during his march to the sea because someone got him drunk on Chatham artillery punch. This is probably not historically accurate. It is exactly the kind of story Savannah tells with a straight face. Savannah and Charleston have been arguing about this soup since 1909, when the generally accepted origin story places it at a dinner party in Charleston hosted by Mayor Rhett. A black cook named William Deese added crab roe to a simple crab bisque, creating she crab soup. The soup spread to Charleston's restaurants and from there to every menu on the South Carolina and Georgia coast. Savannah's version has its own character. The Savannah she crab soup is richer than Charleston's, more cream, sometimes a splash of sherry added to the bowl at service, and the crab flavor is more assertive. Whether this makes it better or worse depends entirely on who you ask and which city they are from. What is not in dispute? She crab soup is on every fine dining menu in Savannah, at 45 Bistro, at the Gray, at Elizabeth on 37th. The restaurant that has defined Savannah's fine dining scene since Elizabeth Terry opened it in 1981 in a restored 1900 Victorian mansion. Terry's She Crab Soup won awards. Her restaurant was named a James Beard Foundation America's Classics recipient. She built a Savannah food culture on Gullah Geechee, ingredients and European technique. In Savannah, they call it a Lowcountry boil. In the rest of the Lowcountry, they sometimes call it frogmore stew. The argument about the name is less heated than the Charleston versus Virginia argument about Brunswick stew, but it exists. The preparation is the same wherever the name: a large pot of heavily seasoned water, Old Bay, crab boil spice, cayenne, brought to a boil. Corn on the cob, cut into rounds. Smoked sausage, cut into pieces. Shrimp, still in the shell. Everything calibrated to finish at the same time. The pot drained. The contents dumped onto a table covered in newspaper. Everyone eats with their hands. In Savannah, the boil is outdoor food. It happens at beach houses on Tybee Island, the barrier island 15 miles east of the city where Savannah goes on summer weekends. It happens in backyards and at tailgates and at the kind of large family gatherings that require industrial quantities of shrimp. The Georgia shrimp in a Savannah boil, white shrimp from Georgia's coastal waters, are a specific product, sweet and slightly briny in a way that Gulf shrimp and Pacific shrimp are not. There is a restaurant in a converted 1938 Greyhound bus terminal on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard in Savannah that has been called one of the most important restaurants in the American South. The Grey opened in 2014. Its chef and co-owner, Mashima Bailey, grew up in the Bronx but spent summers in Savannah with her grandmother. She returned to open a restaurant that draws on Gullah Geechee culinary traditions, on Southern coastal cooking, on the specific flavors of the Georgia coast. And that does all of it at a level of technical sophistication that earned her the James Beard Award for Best Chef Southeast in 2019 and the James Beard Award for Outstanding Chef in 2022. Her pimento cheese is not traditional pimento cheese. It is a starting point. Cheddar, cream cheese, Duke's mayonnaise, roasted pimentos, hot sauce. The classic Southern cheese spread, made with precision and served with house-made crackers. It is the thing people order first at the Grey and remember last. It is simple enough to explain in a sentence and complex enough that nobody makes it quite the same way. Pimento cheese as a category belongs to the entire American South. Savannah was designed in 1733 by General James Oglethorpe with 22 public squares, green spaces surrounded by residential and commercial buildings, connected by tree-lined streets. The squares are shaded by live oaks draped in Spanish moss. They are what visitors photograph. They are also where Savannah eats. The squares and the streets around them support a walking food culture, unlike any other southern city. Savannah has an open container law that allows drinking in public throughout the historic district, a policy that encourages long, slow meals that spill from restaurants onto sidewalks and park benches. Food vendors and food trucks set up around the squares. The city eats outside. The signature walking food of Savannah is the praline, bought on River Street, eaten while walking along the waterfront. The boiled peanuts from a roadside stand. The ice cream cone from Leopold's, carried while walking west on Broughton Street toward Forsyth Park. Every southern coastal city claims shrimp and grits. Savannah's claim is the strongest after Charleston's, and it makes the argument differently. Charleston's shrimp and grits became famous through restaurant culture. Craig Claiborne's 1985 New York Times column, the subsequent fine dining embrace. Savannah's version stayed closer to its Gullah Geechee roots for longer. The version served at Mrs. Wilkes, at local diners, at the kind of Savannah breakfast places that open at 7 a.m. and close when the food runs out, is simpler and more direct. Georgia white shrimp, sautéed in butter with onion and bacon, served over stone-ground grits from a Savannah mill, the whole thing finished with a squeeze of lemon and a dash of hot sauce. The grits matter. Savannah's Geechee Boy Mill on Edisto Island and mills throughout coastal Georgia still produce stone-ground grits from heirloom corn varieties. Coarser, more flavorful, slower cooking than the instant grits that the rest of the country tolerates. A bowl of shrimp and grits made with stone-ground grits from a Georgia mill tastes different from the same dish made with commercial grits. Savannah feeds people the way it does everything else, slowly, lavishly, with complete confidence that there is no hurry and no reason to be anywhere else. The Chatham artillery punch has been felling visitors since the 1850s. Leopold's has been making tutti frutti ice cream since 1919 from the same recipe that a Greek immigrant brought to a former fruit stand at a streetcar intersection. The red rice traces to West African jollof rice, carried across the Atlantic by people who were not free, and has been feeding the city ever since. The pralines on River Street smell the same every afternoon because the copper kettles have been running the same recipe for 50 years. This is a city of 290 years of entertainment. It has practiced. It has the squares and the live oaks and the open container laws and the food to match. Not every city has a cocktail that may have convinced a Union general not to burn it down. Not every city has an ice cream parlor whose owner left for Hollywood, produced blockbuster films for 35 years, and then came back and reopened the family business using fixtures he had kept in storage. Not every city feeds you dessert before you reach the restaurant, because the smell from the praline kettle on River Street got you before you made a decision.